All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Katie Monahan, and I'm a communications strategist here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's informational webinar all about our TeachArtsOhio grant program. But before we dive in, there are, of course, just a few housekeeping items that I need to go over. So first, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. If you have a question at any point, go ahead and enter it into your Q&A box there. We recommend using that instead of the chat. It's just easier to track questions that way, and we don't want to miss anyone. And we're going to hold all of the questions until the dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar presentation. We'll be sure to leave plenty of time for those. Next, live captioning is available for today's webinar, and you can access those captions by clicking on the closed captioning icon in your control panel. And if you have audio issues or trouble connecting, we recommend refreshing your browser. And if that doesn't work, try logging off and then logging back in. And also, please keep in mind that because we are presenting from different locations, there may be some variations in bandwidth or internet stability. So if one of us freezes or pauses for a minute, thank you in advance for bearing with us. We promise we'll do our best to keep on rolling through any little tech glitches. And finally, we are recording today's webinar, and that recording will be available on our webinars page at oac.ohio.gov/webinars and on our YouTube channel by early next week. If you registered for today's webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with a copy of the slide deck and a direct link to that recording. So look for that early next week. And I think that does it actually for housekeeping. So now on to what you're all here for. We're going to learn all about our TeachArtsOhio grant program, and there's no one better to tell us all about it than the person who administers the program, my colleague, our Arts Learning Coordinator, Jodi Kushins. Jodi, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Katie. So hi, everybody. My name is Jodi Kushins, and I'm an Arts Learning Coordinator here at the Ohio Arts Council. And together with my colleague, Chiquita Mullins-Lee, we manage a series of grants, programs, and services that I'm going to share with you today. So a little bit about myself. Prior to joining the Arts Council, I was a high school visual arts teacher, and I was a professor of art education. I supervised student teachers and advised graduate research projects. So I bring that experience and my passion for teaching and learning to my work with TeachArtsOhio. A little overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to share a little context about the Ohio Arts Council for those of you who might not know much about what we do. I'll give a bit of information about the full catalog of grants, programs, and services that we manage in the Arts Learning program, and share details about TeachArtsOhio, including how the program works, how you can apply, and share some examples of past projects. Then I'm going to be joined by Juls Rathje, a middle school visual arts teacher in Westerville, Ohio, and she's going to share some of her experience and advice for applicants. Finally, I'll go over the application timeline for this grant and give you some tips on getting your applications in. So, let's see. So a little bit about the Ohio Arts Council. We are a state agency that funds quality arts experiences in all 88 counties. You can see on this slide, in the past 2 years, we've given out approximately 2,600 grants to artists and organizations, including schools like yours. On average, every dollar that the Ohio Arts Council funds to programs and artists is matched by 39 local and private dollars. And the state recognizes this impressive return on our investment with support through the state budget. In the last biennium, our state appropriation was $51 million for 2 years. And we also receive funding from the National Endowment for the Arts, which equaled approximately $1.3 million over each in the past 2 years. We'd like to note that we spend none of that federal money on administration. We use it all to re-grant out to our constituents across the state. TeachArtsOhio is one of 3 grant programs that the Arts Learning team administers. So you can see all 3 of them on the screen here. We're going to hold off on this middle one, TeachArtsOhio, for the moment. And I'm going to just briefly tell you about the other 2 in case you want to do some more learning about them and think about applying to them in the future. So Arts Partnership is a program that supports arts learning projects that are collaborations between sometimes schools and arts and cultural organizations and bringing arts learning to their communities. Big Yellow School Bus is a program that helps to defray the costs of transportation for students to attend professional arts learning experiences. So I just want to note two things about Big Yellow School Bus. The first is that it is to help students go to museums or to see a symphony or see professional artists and artistry. It is not meant to help get students to, for example, a marching band competition. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to apply for this funding. Another thing to notice is that Big Yellow School Bus, unlike TeachArtsOhio and Arts Partnership, which each have annual application deadlines, the Big Yellow School Bus program has a rolling application deadline. So as long as you apply within 8 weeks or more of the time you want to go on the field trip, you can continue to apply for that fund through the year as long as we still have funding available. So depending on when you're watching this webinar, there may be still be funding available for this year, for this school year. So check our website or reach out to my colleague Chiquita. Information about all of those programs is on a link that Katie's going to put in the chat to our website, where you can read all about our grants. So in addition to our grants, Chiquita and I manage a suite of programs and services that you can see listed on the slide here. So I'll talk about each of them briefly. The Ohio Teaching Artist Roster, Poetry Out Loud, and the Ohio Arts Education Data Dashboard. The Teaching Artist Roster is something you're going to hear a lot more about today. I'll talk about it briefly, and Juls will be talking about it a bit when we have our conversation. But the roster highlights Ohio artists who demonstrate artistic excellence as well as the ability to teach. So they have mastered both teaching in the arts and through the arts. They demonstrate effective classroom management and are really skilled at communicating with a range of collaborators from education and the arts to other cultural partners. So teaching artists on our roster have been vetted through an application process. The Ohio Arts Council maintains the roster together with our partners at the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education, Ohio Dance, and Art Possible Ohio. And together we manage the roster and support these teaching artists with professional development throughout the year that they're required to participate in, and we hope will help to grow their teaching knowledge and skills in order to provide the best arts learning experiences for students around the state. Poetry Out Loud is a program that encourages students in grades 9 through 12 to learn about great poetry through memorization and recitation. This program helps students build public speaking skills and self-confidence and learn about literary heritage and contemporary life. It's created by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation, and it's administered in partnership with the state arts agencies of all 50 states, the District of Columbia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Students who participate in this program participate in competitions at the school-wide level, the regional level, and advance to the state finals before our champion moves on to a competition in Washington, D.C. with their peers from across the country and jurisdictions. That's a program that Chiquita manages. So again, you can find information about it on our website, and I encourage you to check it out and reach out to her about it. Finally, if you're watching this webinar, the chances are good that you understand that the arts are important to student development and success in education and in life. So working in partnership, the Arts Council, together with the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education and the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, maintain the Ohio Arts Education Data Dashboard. This tool enables parents, educators, administrators, and policymakers to see what arts education opportunities are and are not happening in schools and districts across the state. So check it out. There's a link on our website. Katie's again going to put a link in the chat to these resources, and we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions or thoughts on these. So now let's get to what you guys came for today, and that is TeachArtsOhio. This is our signature grant that provides funding for customizable artist residencies in Ohio schools. Public, private, charter, and parochial schools are all eligible for this funding. And through this program, schools connect with teaching artists who share their passion and expertise through engaging, personal, and high-quality arts learning experiences. You'll see on the bottom of the screen that there is no cash match required for this program. So while other grants that the council provides have like if we give you $5,000, you have to come up with $5,000. In this case, we give you the money that you ask for. What we ask for is an in-kind contribution from the schools that we're going to talk about in a moment in terms of your work and supply funds to help make these projects come to life. The amount that you would be requesting is equal to $350 per day of residency, and those funds are completely passed on to teaching artists in the form of their the payment for their work. So the other thing I want to highlight on this slide is that TeachArtsOhio is meant to help alleviate the burden on schools to provide supplemental programming to enhance arts instruction in school. And I want to highlight the word supplement here. TeachArtsOhio is not meant to supplant or replace an arts program like the kind that Juls is providing in her school every day to students. It's rather designed to help schools offer additional programming and special experiences with practicing artists, musicians, actors, dancers, creative writers, and media artists. And in this way, TeachArtsOhio is helping to elevate the profile of the arts in schools across the state. So these grants are cover activities in a single school year. So if you're applying in March of 2025, it would cover activities happening in the 2025-2026 school year. These residencies can last anywhere from 10 to 120 days, and we're going to share some examples of those in a moment. So a little bit more about how the program works. As noted on the last slide, these grants are awarded to schools to cover teaching artist fees. So I just want to highlight that the award goes to the school. So if you're a teaching artist watching this webinar, we're so happy you're watching, and we hope that you will share this information with schools that you want to work with. And just keep in mind that they are the ones who have to apply for these funds. While there are no specific matching funds, again, as I said before, schools are expected to provide in-kind support for this grant in the form of administrative and educational support that includes any administrators or teachers who need to participate in creating and submitting this application, as well as helping to do human resources and other financial work to enable the grant to come to life. The other thing that schools are responsible for is supply budgets. And again, Juls is going to talk a little bit about this, so I'm not going to get into great detail, but it's something to keep in mind as you're putting together your budget and you're thinking about the project that you might want to do with this work, is that is not something that this grant covers. So you'll have to come up with that in another way. So coming to our second big bullet on this slide, it's important to keep in mind that teaching artists who work with TeachArtsOhio are contractors with your school or school district. It's up to you to work with your HR department to get them a background check and to understand how they need to submit invoices, and so that those can be processed and they can be paid. A teaching artist's day on site for TeachArtsOhio should mirror a school day for other teachers. So that can include teaching time, prep time, as well as time sharing the duties that teachers do. That is informal time with students, building relationships with the students, with the staff, and that really helps to foster the community of care and creativity that we aspire to with the TeachArtsOhio program. So finally, it is important to note that teaching artists are collaborators, co-creators of curriculum that you should see as people working side by side with teachers in your school. They're not instructional aides. They're not just meant to be a second set of hands or another body in the room. They really are experts in their artistic disciplines and experienced educators who should be invited in, and you should be excited to work with. So before I have Juls join me, and we're going to cover a lot of this stuff in our conversation, but I just want to go over some of these points briefly to make sure that you hear them and you're aware of them when you're putting together your application. So the first thing that is required on that would be required of you when you apply for this grant is to identify a teaching artist. And I just want to make a note that if you've applied for TeachArtsOhio in the past, this might sound different, and it is. It's a new guideline as of 2025, a new requirement. So in putting together your application, make sure you get a resume and letter of commitment from that teaching artist saying that they're ready to work with you in the upcoming school year. You might also want to upload examples of their personal artwork or prior work with students to demonstrate to the panel reviewing your application that they are qualified and a great candidate to work with, show the breadth of their work. In collaboration with the teaching artist, educators working on this grant will design lesson plans and projects that engage students, staff, and the community that works with your school. So student activities can take place during designated arts time, arts and music classes, or in general education. It's really up to you how you want to put these people to use during the school day. It's important to think about as you're building your narrative for the application, how you're going to tie the learning activities that the teaching artist will be involved in to learning standards. That can be in the arts, it can be an integrated arts experience where you're also drawing on, in addition to arts learning standards, drawing on content standards from other disciplines like English language arts or social studies. And how this project fits in with the school culture and curriculum that is specific to your building, your district. In addition to planning stuff for students, which is obviously the main goal of this project, we want you to design at least one experience for staff. And Juls is going to speak a little bit about how she's done that. Oftentimes, this is an opportunity for educators from other disciplines to participate in an arts activity and envision how they might bring the arts into their own work with students. But it can also be something special that you do for the other arts educators in your district to get them together, to help them explore a new medium and consider how they might bring that into their classes. And finally, think of ways that the broader public, including parents, administrators, and elected officials, might experience this project and get to see what you've been up to. This can be as simple as hosting a culminating exhibition or performance that's open to the public, or it could be something more involved that engages those participants in art making themselves. So I'm going to share a few examples. Juls is really going to be covering the visual arts. So I tried to pick a few examples that cover other arts disciplines. And some of these are longer residencies and some are a little bit shorter. So I'll give you a little bit of information about that as I go along. And as you see these slides, I just want you to keep in mind that these are all images that came from final reports that our grantees submitted to us at the end of their projects. And if you're awarded funding, that is something that you'll have to do too. So it's never too early to think about how you will document the projects that you do and build that into part of your residency plan, thinking about who in your community is really great at photos and maybe can help you with that, and what student work samples will you collect as you go along. So our first example comes from the Columbus City School District, In the 2023 school year, they invited Cynthia Amoa, a Central Ohio-based poet and member of our Ohio Teaching Artists roster, for a 120-day residency. Cynthia worked with students in 2nd through 6th grades to express their ideas through poetry. Cynthia's work was, in part, designed to help prepare students for the school's annual poetry slam. And it's important to note that I'm not going to talk about a specific staff engagement project here, professional development activity, but Cynthia was embedded in the classrooms, and in the final report, the teachers talked about how they were learning strategies that they can now use from year to year in teaching poetry in their general classrooms, but also to continue to support this poetry slam that's been a tradition and now will be that much better because of things they learned from their time with Cynthia. The other thing I just like about these pictures is how they really demonstrate how Cynthia became part of the Indianola community, connecting with students and staff, both in the classroom and beyond. The second example comes from Ashland County and Ashland High School. This grant covered actually a range of artistic disciplines, but I pulled out the part that was focused on music to share how a TeachArtsOhio grant can help to support a music program. So Ashland, this project happened to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the Ashland High School band program. So you can see that they brought in various musicians, conductors, and composers to work with students in various ensembles and throughout the year. And according to the grantee in their final report, one of the best moments was when the concert band debuted a new piece composed and conducted by a nationally known artist. You can see students in a rehearsal for that in the middle. I know it's a rehearsal because they're wearing shorts and t-shirts and clothes that don't match. And I know if this was a concert, they would, for their 100th anniversary, they would be dressed to the nines. But this concert and the TeachArtsOhio grant helped to elevate and promote the music program in Ashland High School throughout the community. So the final example I'm going to share is from the I have so much trouble saying this, Kitty City childcare community in Cleveland, Ohio, Cuyahoga County. And over the course of this 40-day residency, dance educator Tom Everett, who's also on our Ohio Teaching Artists roster, worked with children ages 3 through 5. Students learned sequences of movements that helped them practice gross motor control in time to rhythmic drum beats. Tom helped reinforce preschool math skills, including those related to spatial awareness and counting and recognizing and naming shapes. And so I think you can see, if we just think about toddlers and how they even, there's a social dimension and a mathematical dimension to engaging with a partner in a dance. So these little girls on the left are demonstrating some moves they created together, and the boy on the right is showing how he can make angles with different parts of his body. Tom helped the students create dances based on things they were studying related to opposites and geometry, and they presented their dances in a culminating performance for family and friends. So these are just some of the ways that, some of the examples we've seen of TeachArtsOhio in action. And now I'm happy to introduce Juls Rathje, who's going to be joining me to share some of her work. So Juls has been a public school visual arts educator for 25 years and is currently teaching at Genoa Middle School in Westerville. Throughout her career, Juls has worked with students from pre-K through college, including mentoring student teachers in her classrooms in Ohio and Virginia. In 2019, the Ohio Art Education Association recognized her as an outstanding art teacher with an award. Beyond the classroom, Juls is an accomplished painter and weaving artist whose passion is creating community through the arts. As you'll see, she strives to expose her students to a variety of arts experiences and opportunities. And I got to see this firsthand last fall when I got to visit her classroom. And not only was she teaching with a teaching artist through Teach Arts Ohio. There was another community member working in the corner of the room with students who wanted to learn some knot tying tradition. And there was just always a million things going on in her classroom, opportunities for students. She uses many grants to make this happen, including Teach Arts Ohio. And I invited her today to join us to share her experience writing and facilitating Teach Arts Ohio grants in collaboration with teaching artists over the years. So thank you, Jules, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share.
Well, let's get to that then. So some schools start an application for Teach Arts Ohio in lots of different places. Some start with an idea for a project they want to do, like a mural or a musical production. Some start with a content area that they want to teach through the arts, but you start with the teaching artist. Can you share a bit about your approach to that?
Sure. When I first start thinking about an artist residency, I like to go.
Sorry, Jules, this is
Oh, yeah.
Katie. I'm so sorry to interrupt. It sounds like we're getting a little bit of feedback on your mic, and it seems like when you lean in closer to the computer, it's happening. So can we try? Let's try.
Yes, I will not lean forward. Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. And let me know if I error again. But I wanted to say that I like to start with the Ohio Teaching Artist roster, and then I look into geography and basically searching for artists that are, 30 minutes away or so from where my school is. And then I like to reach out to maybe 4 or 5 artists that I think might be interested. I like to do that early on in the school year because it's such a long process, and then just kind of wait to see who's available. It does take planning. You kind of have to plan a year in advance. So I will reach out in August or September, and then before I start making plans for what we're actually going to do, I kind of want to see who's available and interested to work with me for the following school year.
Thanks. There is still
Jodi,
a little bit of static on the microphone. I don't know what it is. Katie?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Jules, can you check your volume? Can you turn your volume level down a little bit? Sometimes there's a little extra feedback there.
Sure. I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's sounding better. There it is again. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Bear with us here. We have a suggestion from the audience. Do you have headphones in? Do you have
I do
AirPods
not.
in or anything? Okay. Okay.
Let me make an adjustment.
Okay.
I'm going to move my camera a little bit. This might help. I am so sorry.
No worries.
All right.
It's so weird.
Maybe
it didn't happen when we were prepping, but
Of course it didn't happen while we were prepping, Jodi. That would be too easy. Oh, that sounds good, Jules. Can you try one more time?
Sure. Is this better?
no. We just keep going.
I think it's almost like there's feedback when one of us starts to talk. I'm trying to figure out.
I tried mute. See, but if we just sit here quietly, there's no static.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Jules, can you try again?
Yes. Is that sounding a little bit better? No.
Caroline, it's almost like you're crunching on. Are you moving a mouse around your keyboard or your keyboard or anything? Okay. Do you want to try popping off and then coming back into the webinar?
Absolutely.
Check your when you head off, if you can just check when you get ready to come back on, if you can check your audio settings and just make sure that you're not using any kind of offset microphone or anything like that. No? Okay. Let's try popping off, come back in. In the meantime, Jodi can tell us a little bit more. Jodi can vamp for us, right?
Sure.
Okay. That sounds good.
Thank you everyone for your patience.
you don't want to see if there's questions. Yeah, are there any questions?
Well,
yet?
actually, I do have a question. We do have a question. That's a great idea. So somebody asked, just asked about residency days. So do resident artist days have to be consecutive? So for example, I'm only in the classroom 3 days per week. I work in a district the other 2 days.
That's a great question, a really good question. And no, they do not. So that's the part where this like being customizable, it is completely customizable. So some people, and Jules can probably tell you some examples of this too, because I know she's had people who come in the fall for a little bit and then they go away and she does other things with her students and then they come back in the spring. Or you know, she's a middle school teacher, so she might have students for one semester. And so maybe she comes and does a project with the fall students, and then she comes and does a project with the spring students. So it is completely up to you and the teaching artist of what their schedule will allow, what your schedule will allow. But they should be full days. So whenever they're coming in, it should be full days.
Thanks, Jodi.
Mhm.
Waiting for Jules. Do you have any other thoughts on, let's see.
I mean, I guess just adding to that, you know, we have had, we do have people who apply for like I said, anywhere from 10 to 120 days. And so a 10-day residency really is a great way to just focus on a single project or a single experience, and do something really concentrated. And it might be a great way to start. Like if you've never done something like this, I could imagine how sharing your classroom with somebody for the whole year, that could be something that some people like really get jazzed about and something that makes like other people really apprehensive. So I think thinking about what excites you and where would like your line be is really important to think about in terms of working with another person, managing another person, you know, keeping up with the schedule and all of that.
Fantastic. And it looks like we have Jules back with us. She's got a headset on. Let's see if we can,
I
want to
was,
try.
yes, I was hopeful. Does that sound better?
Much
We'll
better.
go with
Fantastic.
headphones. That's great.
Lovely.
Good luck.
All right, back to regularly scheduled programming. Thanks everyone for
Thank
bearing
you.
with us.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So just to remind us, so Jules was telling us about her, how she uses the teaching artist roster to find people. She searches geographically and then contacts a few people and just keeps her. I mean, I think when you first told me that, Jules, I was like, that is so brave and exciting, you know, to have that spirit of like risk taking that you're demonstrating for your students too. They might not know it because you're not telling them this whole process, but I can see it and I pat you on the back for that, to be open to whoever is open to, you know, and available to working with you and then seeing where that takes you. So tell us a little bit about the artists that we see here, just briefly, you know, who are these folks and what did you have them come in and do?
Sure, sure. Vicky Murphy is the artist on the left, and that's in my current classroom from this school year. And I actually started working with Vicky 6 or 7 years ago, and it did take a year or two before I was able to work with her. So something to keep in mind when you're writing grants, it's good to start early because often they have their artist residencies. So reaching out nice and early. And in that particular photograph, we were working on creativity. Our theme for this year is mindfulness, and so we were discussing creativity. Students worked in partners and they did drips on one day, and then this photograph is the second day after it's been dry, and they go back in with their partner and Sharpie, and so they kind of draw what they see, just kind of to get them thinking. And then a nice collaborative project. That was a short 2-day project. The artist in the middle is Ann Silverman. I did a residency with her for 10 days, and she came into my elementary classroom, and she worked with students in a small group in the back of my classroom. We had a shared space for her to work with small groups of students. I also invited parents to come in, and so students made a double-sided piece of paper And so at the end of that residency, we had a big culture celebration, music performance, art on display. And so Anne took all of the student work and wove them together so that you can't tell in the photo, right, but they're actually double-sided. So our theme had to do with ecology and the environment. And so those are actually drawings of underwater animals where students did a little bit of research, and then they used watercolor pencils on top of the paper. And then the gentleman on the right is Eric Marlowe. He does his company Recyclabits. And so he came in and did a presentation to the whole elementary, which was fantastic. And then he worked in my classroom teaching students about recycling and artwork. And I had asked for families to send in materials about a month before. So as far as budget, that was free because as far as the materials, because parents were sending in things that were needed. And so students really enjoyed that, kind of getting messy with things that they'd brought in from home.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing those stories, bringing those photos to life for us. A key part of the application is the narrative describing like what people are going to do with this money and this project. So I'm curious if you can share a little bit about how you come up with that plan, knowing that you said you start with the artist, not a project in mind. Can you walk us through a little bit about how you collaborate with the teaching artists that you work with to design a residency that builds on what each of you know and love and are excited about sharing with students?
Absolutely. So once an artist is available and interested in working with me, then I have phone conversations with them about their artwork. I do my own research and what kind of work they like to create if they've done past residencies. And then from there, we talk together to come up with, I like to have a theme. Um, I will write the grant, but I like to share the narrative and kind of what I'm thinking. So to have the artist look at it and see if they're on the same page. Um, I bring the standards, and so I include those in the narrative, and then the artist is adding, you know, his or her own technical expertise. If it's paper making, it's just such a rich environment to bring an artist into the art classroom. I like to have a general idea of what we're going to be doing. And mapped out so that the narrative is accurate, and this is our plan, so the artist knows well before the school year what we're thinking. And then over the summer, typically we'll have a phone conversation or meet for coffee and just talk about specifically what we're planning together and make sure that we're on the same page.
You talked about having the plan. Can you talk a little bit? We all know that sometimes plans don't work out as planned. So can you think of an example, maybe when the plan went in a direction that was a pleasant surprise and a time when maybe it was a little bit more challenging?
Sure. Yes, I think I am a planner. I really like to have everything organized with the knowledge that things happen. I had an artist who had a grandbaby that came, and so it kind of changed as far as times and how that was going to work. I have gotten school assignments that have changed where I've needed to adapt. And so having both the artist and the teacher ready and prepared that there's going to need to be changes that might happen, planning staff workshops and things like that, being flexible, knowing that um, you're going to know your school best and what's going to work. And so plan might change. Snow days, you know, like we just not really sure. So just being super flexible.
Great. Those are really good reminders for people to keep in mind. Because it is a lot to write a grant application and then you want it to go flawlessly. One more thing before we move on from this slide. I know, you've talked about working with Vicky, and I know mosaics can be really expensive. Does your school supply budget provide you enough money to do the supply part of this? Or how else do you find, talk to us a little bit about how you pay for this. your end of it?
That's such a good question, and something that I had not thought about when I had first started. Depending on the artist that you work with, it's going to determine budget needs. However, to go back to what you mentioned about being flexible, um, I I like to write outside grants. I'm really in touch with my city arts council. Districts might have grants that you can write. Union, OEA often has grants that can be written. So once you have a plan and you know kind of what you're thinking, it is a good idea to start researching outside uh, places that could help with funding. Mosaic art is very expensive. Wendy Kendrick is an artist I'm working with this year, and she is a fiber collage artist. Families, I send out emails requesting supplies, and for sure, families love sending in fabric and yarn. I have an abundance of that. So, reaching your school community and seeing what they have to offer, or your local community, if people know that your school, you as the art teacher are needing recycled materials or boxes, Amazon boxes. I'm always surprised at how many things are brought into the school that students, even if they just bring in, we're going to be working on architectural letters with Wendy Kendrick coming up in the next few weeks. And so students are already bringing in cereal boxes, and that's free. So having a plan in mind, but knowing that it might need to change based on, what supplies you have available. But I think that can also be something really beautiful that I hadn't really anticipated, that was sort of in the plan, but needed to be changed, that had a really beautiful result. And so not only is my heart enriched, but my artist then gets into it like, oh, yeah, that's great. We can work with it. So it provides a really beautiful opportunity for all parties.
Thanks so much. I'm thinking too about just how we like to think that the funding we provide helps people leverage other funding. So I hope that people listening will think about, how can you use a Teach Arts Ohio grant to go to your community and say, we got this, or your PTA, and say, we just got all this money from the Ohio Arts Council. Can you give us just a little bit to help us realize our dreams and our project goals here?
I do
So
want to also add,
yeah,
oh, sorry, just one more thing. I also like to go to Home Depot, like with mosaics, we need grout, and businesses. So not just, communities and grants and your, family community members. Businesses are happy to donate. And I always say that we'll have a plaque next to whatever installation or project, recognizing them and letting them know, but they're always very happy to donate and help us however they can.
that's a great point. Yeah, thank you. So moving along to professional development, and speaking of Wendy Kendrick, can you just talk a little bit, when you shared these pictures with me of this professional development that she helped lead, these are great photos and teachers look so engaged. Can you tell us a little bit about what was happening here?
Sure. So we have professional development in Westerville. We have one in August, November, and February. And so I knew when I wrote asking for her to come in on this particular day that we would have time. And, art teachers, we love getting together. So this particular day, we got to spend the morning where it was all just art teachers. And Wendy came in on our professional development day, and she spent 2.5 hours, I think, and worked with art teachers. That workshop is teachers grades K through 12. So it's everyone. Wendy's comfort level, I think, was elementary, but I showed her how amazing middle school people are, and her projects are applicable. The top right photo, that teacher in the back, those are high school teachers. And so we talked about the residency. And actually, after this professional development, I did have another teacher in our district write a TeachArtsOhio grant, just finished last year working with a resident artist. So we were able to inspire teachers to work on future grant writing, but the purpose of that workshop was for Wendy to share what she's doing. Teachers walked away with projects that they could teach their students. I got texts and emails from teachers showing me what their sweet little elementary kiddos were creating based on, Wendy's presentation and what she shared, which of course gets us excited, and to see the collaboration between, I think we have 11 elementaries in Westerville. So just to see them collaborating and meeting, and then I got to work with the middle school art teachers. So it was a really positive day.
That's great. Thank you so much. I want to just, I don't want to take too much time, because I want to leave some time for questions at the end, but I did want to spend a little bit of time on the way that you have engaged the community beyond just your students and colleagues through some of these grants. So I know you shared a lot of examples of this with me. I put a few on this slide. Do you want to pick just one story to share with us today of how you've engaged community as a connection to your TeachArtsOhio grants?
Sure. I'll try not to talk too much. I'm sorry. That's probably me getting a little too excited. So the bottom left is Wendy Kendrick, my 8th grade students who are taking Art Foundations class for high school credit. One of their focuses was on service. And so this was not a planned project. Wendy loves painting, and so we were able to use her expertise. So that's Wendy and me in the picture. And so I reached out to a few different community organizations who might be open to us doing a service project. And so that picture is students picked an animal. We looked online with the CHA Animal Shelter. And so students created a painting on canvas with Wendy and I. And then Wendy and I took them to the animal shelter. It was really sweet because the people knew right away by looking at the photograph or at the painting. And they're like, oh, he just got adopted. So they called the family and shared it. So that was meaningful. Can I just real quick, the one on the bottom right is a family. We always did an elementary and art celebration night. And so that bottom one, Vicki Murphy and I did a mosaic making workshop where we really wanted the parents and the students to work together. So while the parents are there to see the music, they had the art on display. And then Vicki was there at that evening, encouraging families to make a small mosaic that they could then take home. And the one on the right was this past year. We worked with the senior center near my school. We took a walking field trip. The senior center residents gave us a list of 3 things that they were interested in, like travel, reading, and grandkids. And then my students took those ideas, created a very specific artwork about the resident, and we worked with Wendy Kendrick on that. So she brought in her knowledge. And then we framed it with mats, and then we took it over to them. That was an important part of the grant, is that you didn't just make art and drop it off like the paintings with the animals. It had to be that way, but the residents, we took it to them. And when other teachers heard what I was doing, the engineering department, they made keychains for residents from our school. So the engineering teacher, and then the other art teacher took the list of items that what the residents had said, and then they created watercolor cards that were personalized. So when my students walked over, they had a Ziploc bag. So it was multiple pieces from multiple classrooms. Lots of students going together to this one resident, and it was really, really a meaningful experience for them and my students.
So glad. I'm so happy that story ended. This bag of stuff, like I was going there in my mind, like those examples, the shelter and the older folks, those are things that you can do in an integrated arts across the disciplines kind of experience. So fabulous examples. Thank you so much for sharing those and for sharing everything. And I really appreciate how you brought to life the possibilities of this grant. So stay with us a few more minutes and we'll see if we have time for questions. This is my last slide, and I just wanted to go over briefly the timeline for application and review of these TeachArtsOhio grants. So a few key things to keep in mind. And again, you can find all of this information on the TeachArtsOhio page on our website. And I am available anytime that you want to reach out with questions. But a few things that you should definitely keep in mind as you're applying. The first is that all of our grant application activities take place in ARTI, which is the Ohio Arts Council's grant management system. If you're new to ARTI, you will need to set up a profile both for yourself as a contact on the grant, as well as for your school. If you're in a public school district, the district will also need a profile. So really the easiest thing to do is just call the office and myself or someone can help set up those accounts for you and get you started. The next thing I want to share is about drafting an application and requesting feedback. We strongly encourage new applicants to write your application as early as possible. And then there's a button in Artie that you can hit before you submit an application that says request feedback. And I'll get a notification and I'll go into the system and I'll read what you've written so far and provide you some advice on how to make it better or tell you it's totally amazing and hit that submit button. So that is a service that's available up to 2 weeks before the deadline. So the deadline for this grant is March 1st. So around February 15th would be the final time that you could press that request feedback button. If it's there, you could press it. If it's not, it means you missed the deadline for that. So, so that is something to keep in mind. Another thing, the March 1st is an annual deadline. And the time we're recording this, 2025, March 1st will fall on a Saturday. So March 3rd will be the date. So that's all written on our website. You can see that if the deadline falls on a weekend or holiday, it rolls to the next business day. The other thing you'll find information about is our panel review. So all TeachArtsOhio applications are reviewed by a panel of arts and culture professionals, educators, and artists and other community members. They will read it, score it, and discuss all of the applications in a public panel meeting that is held virtually. And you can and are encouraged as an applicant to log in and listen to hear what they're talking about in relation to your application, both to make the plan better if you do get funding, and also to improve an application in the future if you do not get funding this cycle. Once it goes through the panel, recommendations will be sent to our board at their summer meeting in July, and then the notifications go out as soon as they've made their decision on funding. So with that, I am going to pass this back to Katie to monitor our question and answer period. And thanks again, Jules, for being with us. And I'm excited to hear what questions you all have.
Yeah, thanks, Jodi. And yeah, Jules, echoing Jodi's comments, it was so fun to hear about what's going on in Westerville and just the impact and the collaboration that can result from a single residency. Like, that was so fascinating, the examples that you gave, especially in the community and with the other teachers. So thank you so much for all that you're doing there. I wanted to shout out, I know you mentioned working with Vicki Murphy. I see Vicki is joining us on the webinar today. So hi, Vicki, thanks for joining us and all the great work you do. But yeah, we have a time for a few questions. If we don't get to your question, don't worry. I've been tracking them, we're saving them, and someone will follow up with you after the webinar is over within the next 48 hours. So first, let's see. You both talked a little bit about being flexible. And so Liz is asking, if a teaching artist needs to leave a project, is there a process, or what is the process to bring in another artist to complete the project?
So if you need to make a change like that, or if when you apply, you say that your project's going to be finished by February, but then because of calamities, like Jules said, it's going to push into March or April or something like that. You just need to notify our office, notify me, and we can talk about subbing out a different teaching artist. And if you need help finding somebody, we can try to make recommendations. But you need to just keep in touch with us. And that is really important. Again, like, we had a school district where there was a teacher strike and there wasn't school for an entire month. And so we know things happen, like Jules said, we try to be flexible, but we do ask that you keep in touch with us.
Thanks, Jodi. Next, so both of you talked a little bit about the process of choosing an artist to work with for the residency. And I think you both mentioned using the teaching artist roster. So Jess was just asking, as far as connecting with artists, is there a specific method appropriate for reaching out to an artist? So can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Jules, do you want to talk about how you've done it in the past?
Sure, sure. The website is very easy to navigate. There are a lot of artists on there, so I narrowed it down to I wanted to work with a fine artist. So once I had that, I read their bio and I figured out their location, and then I reached out through email. And so I kind of crafted a very similar email and just sent it out to 4 or 5 artists to see if they were interested and when they might be interested. Because even if they're not for the next school year, you could always keep it in your back pocket and contact them. You go in a couple of years, but email was how I reached out.
Yeah, and I think they should all have their email addresses there. I think there's also some button where you can use the system to contact our office to help you communicate with them. And so then I'm happy to sort of help be a connector, but that direct communication, whether they have their email address, some have their phone number, some have a website that has a contact page. So I wouldn't say if they're there, they want you to contact them. So
Perfect. Yeah, lots of great, super talented, amazing artists on that roster. Definitely check it out. We'll do one more. So somebody is asking, so Jodi, you mentioned the $350 per residency day, is that correct? So Meryl is asking, is $350 the max honorarium you can pay a teaching artist? Is that just what the OAC program covers, or can the school pay more? You know anything about that?
I saw that question and I saw there was another one, and I hope you'd go to the other one, because honestly, Meryl, that's a good question. It's really generous of you to want to pay more. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can get back to you. I will say that it is my understanding that this is a fairly competitive rate, and so, we might not be keeping up with the most recent inflation, but we have been trying to, and it is a goal of the Arts Council to pay artists and teaching artists a fair wage. So I'm not exactly sure where the question's coming from, but I can look into the answer to your question and try to get back to you.
Thanks. And I think we'll have time for one more here. You talked a little bit about feedback requests for folks who have draft applications in the system. Somebody was asking if there's a maximum number of times that they can submit their in-progress application for feedback.
Probably not. I don't know that the system will stop you. I guess I will say from my teaching experience, I know that the students who usually ask for the most feedback are the ones who are usually doing pretty well. So I guess you'll have to use your judgment in terms of the type of feedback you get and whether it's really necessary to ask for feedback again. I guess I would just ask, as the person giving the feedback, to be mindful that there's only so much feedback I can give. There's other things I'm doing too. So, but I suppose if the system lets you do it, then you can do it.
Just remember to do it within the 2 weeks before the deadline, right? All right. Well, we are coming up on 5 o'clock here. So I just wanted to thank everyone once again for taking the time to tune in. Hopefully now you feel like you have all the information that you need to submit those competitive grant applications. Thanks again, Juls, for sharing your experience with us. Like we said, it was super fascinating to hear from your point of view and things that have worked in the classroom for you. And Jodi, of course, thank you for everything here. Jodi is fantastic. She is here to answer your questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to her. And her counterpart, Chiquita, is fabulous as well for the grant programs that she's in charge of. Jodi, do you have anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I see there are a couple of other questions, so I will sit here and type answers, or I'll get back to people through Katie. And we appreciate you being here. We appreciate your interest, and I look forward to seeing your applications.
Yeah, fantastic. Don't worry, Jodi. I'm saving all of these questions, and everyone who registered today will get a copy of the recording and a copy of the slide deck early next week. So thanks so much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Thanks.